The California School District approves a new curriculum accusing Israel of ethnic cleansing. Plus, people continue to flee war-torn Sudan despite an extended ceasefire, and the Biden administration issues sanction on Iran and Russia. To discuss all of this and more is our foreign affairs correspondent, Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, who joins us from Los Angeles. Lisa, welcome. Great to have you on once again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Lisa, despite the extension of a ceasefire, heavy fighting does continue to rage on in Sudan with rocket attacks in the country's capital city of Khartoum. So it seems that this is over a conflict involving two generals.
Basically a conflict over egos. It's very difficult to see how there will be a resolution in sight, some sort of a compromise of sorts, splitting the country in half. I mean, what will it take for these two men to back down? And ironically, these two men were supposed to integrate in the aftermath of political turmoil that we recently had in Sudan. They were supposed to integrate their armies to protect the country. And of course, when money gets in the way, greed gets in the way. There are gold mines in the country. When they wanted to get into the gold mines, they started fighting and wanting to have, again, possession of these, more favorable areas. So a lot going on, a lot of nuances going on. But of course, the people will pay the consequences, the death toll rising there. The ceasefire is not sticking. And we're glad that the Western nations have been able to start their evacuations. The United States is lagging a bit. The European nations got their people out. The United States started last weekend with personnel from the embassy. And after much backlash, a lot of criticism, they began with the civilian evacuations as well. Now we're getting U.S. citizens out as well. So, of course, the entire international community looking and hoping that this ceasefire will work, that they come to their senses, and that the people are out of harm's way.
What is the U.S. plan for evacuating its citizens? You were saying that they're lagging a little bit there.
Right. So originally, they took out their embassy personnel, and the order, according to the State Department, was to shelter in place. They told us, and the Foreign Desk reached out to the State Department. They told us that they thought that that was the best course of action because it was too dangerous to get people out right now. The estimated number of U.S. citizens was 16 to 18,000 there, and of course, John Kirby said to the media that well, perhaps some of those people don't want to get out, and some of them may be U.S. citizens who are living there. They're Sudanese nationals and they want to stay there. But of course, again, the criticism being, well, how about the people who do want to get out and they want to get out to safety? So of course, there was a lot of criticism and a lot of attention on the State Department over the last week, and they began evacuations at the over the weekend, and we're waiting to see how that goes. But again, Germany, France, the UK were able to get their nationals out. We reported on that. And now, again, U.S. following suit.
I'm having flashbacks of Afghanistan from last year, all of a sudden, with all the evacuation. So, yeah, Lisa, the Biden administration has issued sanctions on Iran and Russia. So will these sanctions help Americans being held abroad to come home?
Right, and that's the goal. It's interesting because you see a lot of these rogue nations standing up to the United States and really trying to stick it to us when it comes to foreign policy and when it comes to carrying out their own agendas. So in the case of Russia, you have them invading Ukraine right now. You have them evading the U.S. sanctions that are already in place. You have them trading with unlikely partners like Iran's regime, or like North Korea, like China. So the rogue players on the map have found each other and have found ways to evade the United States and their economic punishments together. And again, Iran and Russia being at the top of that list. Now, these two nations also are holding Americans hostage. And when it comes to negotiating with terrorists or rogue partners, the United States doesn't want to give in, but many times they have to. And there is some sort of, prisoner swap, and it's always lopsided. We just had Victor Bout in exchange for Brittany Griner, the WNBA player here in the United States. We brought her back home. Of course, there are other American citizen, Paul Whelan, still in Russia, and in Iran. We have many U.S. Nationals being held there, and we've been asking for them to be released for many years. And of course, the Iran regime continues with its rogue behavior, both inside the country and outside. And now we have a new set of sanctions by the Biden administration. But Jeanette, the bottom line is Iran's regime, Russia's government, they know what the Biden administration is all about. We're working in circles here. In one breath, the Biden administration is working to loosen money and funds to Iran's regime through Iraq. And on the other hand, trying to punish them with sanctions, or at least the announcement of sanctions from the podium. Who knows if they'll be enforced? Who knows if they'll be taken seriously? And that's the bottom line here. If our adversaries don't take us seriously, then these sanctions, they're just lip service from the podium. So we'll have to see if we can bring those hostages back home and what it will take, but it's not going to be lip service from the podium. It's going to take much more enforcement than that.
Lisa, can you maybe tell us the importance of the U.S. presence in Iraq? Is it effective in hampering Iran and Islamic terrorism?
Yeah, well, the United States being in the Middle East, having some sort of foothold in the Middle East has had a ripple effect in terms of Iran's regime being able to carry out many of its goals. Mainly for 44 years since Iran's regime has been in power, its goal has been to spread its brand of Islam, which is Shiite Islam, in a form of political Islam throughout the country. So govern throughout the region rather. So throughout the region, they've wanted to spread their brand, their hegemony. They've wanted to just grow in terms of their influence, and U.S. influence in these places has definitely helped in curbing that growth, that influence. It's also helped in protecting Israel, our ally in the region. Of course, they have superior intelligence to the United States in terms of watching over Iran's growth and the way that it is spreading its influence in places like Syria and Iraq. But of course, again, the United States having some sort of foothold there, and that's what we said. That was the criticism when we said that the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan. For 20 years, the U.S. was there. They had some sort of presence there. And of course, we don't want these troops there indefinitely. Of course not. But we hope that we do get some sort of results from sending our treasure over to the region and leaving with some sort of stability or security in place before we do pull out. So that's what we're hoping for Iraq as well. We know Iran's regime is hovering over, hoping to have full control and access to the region. And of course, countries like Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and the list goes on. They do have their footprints there and their influence there as well.
Absolutely. Now, Lisa, over the weekend, footage was aired on Iranian TV showing Iranian commandos seizing a tanker that was bound for the U.S. So what was on the ship that Iran was after?
Yeah, it's amazing what the Iran's regime has been able to do since Biden has been in office in terms of its chest thumping and showing this bad behavior to show that it's not afraid of the United States or the West, right? So in 2018, just to rewind just a bit, Donald Trump pulled out of the JCPOA, the nuclear deal that was struck between Iran's regime and the five Western powers, P5+1, in Obama's era. That being really the crown jewel of the Obama foreign policy. And then President Trump campaigned on pulling out of this deal. He did pull out of it. And ever since then, the Biden administration coming into office has tried to get back into a deal. Now, you would think, and I give this roundabout, connecting of the dots, because you would think that Iran's regime would be on its best behavior to get back into a deal, but it's just the opposite. We have seen them crack down on their own civilians at home, peaceful protesters being shot, killed, and put into prisons. We've seen them chemically attacking young students in schools. We've seen them poking, blinding them in the eye because they're peacefully protesting, killing them, shooting at them point blank on the streets. And then you have what they're doing in the region, putting billions of dollars into global terrorism, suicide bombings, organized terror groups like Hezbollah and Hamas and others, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And then you look at the Biden administration and say, why are you trying to strike a deal with this regime that now is taking our oil tankers? We're not safe, not in the region, not at home. They're at our footstep in Latin America, just south of our border here. So there's a lot to connect. And I know this is a very roundabout answer, but to give you an aerial view of what the Iran regime has done and how the West is treating them, the Europeans and the United States alike, still wanting a courtship, still wanting to get closer to Iran's regime in order to strike a deal.
Now, closer to home for you, especially the California School District has approved 2 new curriculums, which accuses Israel of ethnic cleansing and war crimes. So, Lisa, you're right there in California. You must have some firsthand knowledge on this. What's going on exactly? How did this come to be?
This is mind-boggling, Jeanette. That's what it is. This is mind-boggling that any school system, that any place in the world would be so fixated on teaching young students about just propaganda against Israel, our ally. So you would think they would perhaps look to the White House and say, well, what is our positioning in terms of this country with Israel? Well, Israel is an ally. Israel has been an ally for decades. It's our only ally, the only democracy in the Middle East. So why would a school system be so fixated on teaching propaganda against our ally? Well, it can only mean one thing, and there are external influences. So it's either people on the school board, it's either individuals who are hell bent on raising these issues, just like we have them in Congress. We have women that are elected into Congress that their entire being, their presence, their agenda, their reason for being in Congress is to spread anti-Israel propaganda. And here you have it in more, locally at a school, in a school system, where in Santa Ana they decided to teach this propaganda. Then you ask yourself, are they teaching propaganda against countries like Russia and China, North Korea, Iran's regime, countries that actually we do have issues with, that they are killing their own, that they do have human rights abuses records? Why aren't we teaching that? And why the fixation on a country like Israel? I mean, we have many, many more bad characters and actors on the map, and why aren't they going after them? It can only be one thing, and that kind of traces us back to anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiments. That again, it's propaganda, and these individuals have to be rooted out. And when you're starting with young children and kind of brainwashing them at such a young age, when they don't have any sort of other influence or any sort of way of getting knowledge about these topics, it's a very serious issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, looking to your southern border there, Lisa, President Biden has authorized the military to call up reservists to combat drug trafficking at that southern border. So, Lisa, it seems he's declaring this a national emergency. So, what is this executive order? What will it do exactly, and what does it mean?
Well, yeah, first, it means that the Biden administration is finally acknowledging that there is an issue at our southern border, something that Mayorkas and the Biden administration have been denying for such a long time. Secondly, it confirms what our Border Patrol agents have been telling us, that there is a crisis at the southern border and that they're not capable of handling it with the resources that they have been given. Thirdly, it also confirms the fact that it's been very difficult to hire for these positions at the southern border. Nobody wants that job. It's dangerous, it's thankless, and they're not getting anywhere because there is such a clash between Border Patrol and the Biden administration in terms of what the policy should be. So I've heard this firsthand from a lot of Border Patrol agents, people who are seeing this firsthand and complaining that they can't carry out their job because of the policies coming from Washington, D.C. And lastly, it puts reservists in a position to now have to step up and to help out, roll up their sleeves and help out with a major crisis. Look, nobody is against legal immigration. We want people to come to this country. We want them. We need them for many reasons. We want them to have an opportunity. I'm the daughter of immigrants to this country, and I couldn't be more proud of my parents for making the decision to come here and to give me all those opportunities. But they came here legally. And the reason I say that is because we have a major crisis here. People conflate these issues. First of all, if you think it's a humanitarian position you're taking, people have to swim, they drown, they get raped, they get killed, there's sickness. I mean, there's so many challenges that these individuals face in order to get here illegally because they give them these false hopes. They pay money to coyotes, they put themselves in harm's way, they put their children at risk as well. Once they get here, we have a major drug crisis at the border, exactly what the Biden administration is admitting. We're allowing all of that to come into this country unvetted. And there's no way to stop it because of the lack of control at the border. So if we were to say, listen, we want to protect our suburbs, we want to protect our teens from dying from fentanyl overdose, from dying from all these different drug overdoses, new things being introduced to our young children, our young teens, then we have to stop the issue at its root and not at the border itself.
Looks like we are about out of time here, but Lisa Daftari of the Foreign Desk, thanks so much for joining me today.
Of course, thank you for having me, Jeanette.